San Francisco is a city of extremes. On any given day, you can see souped-up Lamborghinis and beautiful painted Victorian homes in upscale neighborhoods, but you can also walk down a few blocks and find piles of trash, puddles of urine, and raggy tents set up along the sidewalk used as someone's home. The homelessness crisis hits deep in San Francisco Bay Area. According to Kositsky's Department of Homelessness, about 8,000 people make up the total estimated homeless population just in this past year. In line with the statistics, this number will only keep growing as time goes on. This crisis is shocking. Knowing that 2/3 of the homeless population are living on the street, in cars or in tents, while the rest live with the uncertainty over whether their bed will be a relative's couch or in a local shelter, really does put the issue in perspective. Having extensively researched this topic, today I will explain to you the grand scale of the homelessness crisis in San Francisco, focusing specifically on the origins, its consequences, and steps towards a possible solution. So, let's ask ourselves, can we really pinpoint the causes of homelessness? Is it a housing problem or possibly an economic one? This issue can be tackled from a variety of different perspectives, one of which being that of Michael Stone, who wrote in his book, A Route to Housing, that homelessness developed as a social issue in the late 1970s. Back in the day, the people we know as hippies voluntarily chose homelessness as a lifestyle. This could have been as a result of substance abuse or maybe a lack of self-control, but ultimately it went along with this idea that they were withdrawing from what was mainstream in American life. This time period created an explosion of homelessness and could have a connection to what we see today. However, another perspective would argue that homelessness is involuntary and a consequence of the economy. Jillian Flakus wrote in his article on the AP News that most people are homeless because they just can't afford a place to live. All it takes is a prolonged illness, a lost job, or a family crisis, any setback, and people are being pushed into the streets because of how expensive it is to live. For people who've lived in the Bay Area or even just visited, we all know how expensive it is to buy groceries in the store or even buy a meal in a restaurant. Well, imagine buying or renting a house. Considering this, it's not rocket science that homelessness is so prevalent in the area. Moving on to the next point, this crisis has huge consequences, specifically environmental implications for the city. For anyone who has been to San Francisco, we have all seen the piles of trash, whether that be plastic wrappers, used syringes, or human waste scattered across the sidewalks and streets. In an article from the San Francisco Chronicle, Curtis Alexander said that the misery of homelessness has turned parts of the beautiful city into a public toilet. This has even been nationally recognized, as in September of this year, Trump said that his administration would issue a notice of environmental violation against the city because of its homelessness problem. He said that the city was in complete violation of environmental rules because the streets and even the oceans were flooding with garbage. Finally, let's look at some possible solutions. It's obvious that authorities are trying to tackle the issue, but the money that they are throwing at the issue doesn't seem to be doing much. According to Rob Rosenthal in his book 15 Responses to Homelessness, right now the government is relying on these types of laws that are against homeless behavior in an attempt to hide the issue. Instead, however, a possible solution could be providing permanent and low-cost housing to those who need it. Not only giving people a bed to sleep in at night, but also resources for mental health through voluntary support systems in the community. Obviously, this is easier said than done, but an organization in New York called the Coalition for Homeless did something similar in a program called Housing First. This was very successful, so if it works in New York, why not try something similar here in San Francisco? To bring this outpour of information to an end, I hope I have given you all a new perspective on a crisis that is happening right outside our doors. Homelessness is so prevalent, not just in San Francisco, but in cities all across California, the nation, and even across the whole world. This is something we should be educated and informed about in order to work towards solutions to see a better future for those without a home. Thank you.
Okay, how did that go?
I think it went pretty well. I came up here not thinking it would go that well, but it came to me because I did a lot of research. So yeah.
Okay, all right. All right. Audience, if you could.
I really like this structure, and I thought your 3 main points were super clear. It sounded exactly like what you were talking about.
You have a really good speaking voice. It's very smooth, and I thought it was super important.
I like that you picked this topic that a lot of people can relate to because a lot of people are from the Bay Area and kind of have that help us visualize it.
Emma, your structure was really clear. I thought you did a nice job of laying out your speech in terms of what you were going to be covering for us. It is something that's kind of blown up and gotten way out of hand. And yeah, lots of variables that could be part of it. I was up there this weekend and talking to my brother-in-law who lives in the city. It's pretty fascinating because he lives in an area that just got recently gentrified in the last 15, 20 years. And what used to be a sleepy little part of San Francisco on the backside of Potrero Hill is now this really vibrant community that has really, really expensive homes, which are half a block away from the projects. And so it's crazy. Anyway, okay. One of the things I would suggest for you, Ms. Emma, I would say let's work on shortening your sentences because they sound like essay sentences, and we don't want to sound like essay sentences. We really want to sound like speaking sentences. So especially in that introduction, in those first few sentences, it kind of came across like you had an essay, and then you gave a really nice, clear credibility statement, and you laid out where your points were going to be going. Really get our attention, draw us in, have us be motivated to listen. I don't know if you looked at the audience analysis sheet in terms of how many people are from the Bay Area that have probably in some way, shape, or form touched it, been driven through the city, or live in the city, or whatnot. So really be thoughtful about how you can draw us in and sort of make us get us a little more included. Right? That would be my suggestion with that. I thought in terms of the body of your speech, you did a nice job of laying out when your points were going to be. I thought your transition was really nice and clear between that first and second main point. You said, okay, well, you did that, let's move on to this. And so I would suggest you had the slides that sort of identified what your points were going to be. I think once you transitioned and moved into it, I would probably go to a blank screen, because what happened, I found myself doing is as you were talking, I started looking at the image and started to dissect it a little bit, and I caught myself, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to pay attention to what you're saying. So unless you have something on the screen in that particular picture that you're actually wanting to draw our attention to, move it to a blank slide. Okay. Your eye contact was rather good. It felt like you knew your information. It felt like I wanted to listen more what you had to say. I think you had some good evidence in there that you built in terms of your support material. You peppered that in throughout your speech. Your sources were relevant and appropriate. I think that was all really strong. I would just say let's work on that sort of delivery style. Let's get you away from essays and move you into speech language. Okay. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you.